Guitars made out of wood. Well, I'll just pretend I did. I'm doing it verbally. Chuck Haddix here in the middle, getting handshook, getting pointed out here by Bob McWilliams. Welcome, Chuck. Chuck Haddix is the director of the Mars Sound Archives at the University of Missouri at Kansas City. This vast collection of 250,000 sound recordings is an international resource for music aficionados and scholars. Haddix has written for Downbeat and Living Blues magazines, and his encyclopedic knowledge of music has resulted in consultancies with film, theater, and video projects, including Robert Altman's Kansas City and Merchant Ivory's Mr. and Mrs. Bridge. As host for KCUR Radio's Fish Fry, which is every Friday and Saturday night, 8 to midnight, Haddix brings the best in blues, R&B, soul, jumpin' jazz, and zydeco to thousands of listeners who crave the show's Friday and Saturday night house party vibe. That's Chuck Haddix. A round of applause for everyone, and I'd like to invite them to come up and say a few words. Let's start where I started off with.
Such a pleasure to be sharing the stage up here with these two colleagues. The first time I met Bob Sukio was in an American literature class at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And I remember sitting next to him when he dropped a half pint of whiskey in the aisle. Could have very well been a pie. And I first became introduced to folk music, of course, as a child through the radio. And I've always been a very big fan of the radio, and I was a big fan of, well, the kind of stuff you heard of the radio, Kingston Trio, Peter, Paul, and Mary. And it was Bob Sukio and some other good friends that introduced me to the Fool Killer years ago when it was over on 31st Street. And I became fascinated with the music and old-time music and blues. And since then, I've had the pleasure of being, well, guilty of selling more than a few folk records working in the record industry. And since 1985, I've had the pleasure of putting on a public radio party every Friday and Saturday night at 89.3 FM and playing more than my share of old-timey folk music. And of course, and also, you know, as presiding over a building since 1987, a first-class collection of historic recordings and photos, includes over 350,000 recordings now. Of course, all men lie about the size of their record collection, so I will continue that. But it is indeed to be honored by Lewis Myers, and we welcome you here to Kansas City and enjoy some barbecue, go out and hear some music, and enjoy the city, because this is where it's happening. But you guys have really raised the bar for all of us with your inclusion and your welcoming spirit. Thank you very much. I'm very honored.